Hi everyone, welcome to this afternoon's class on Deepening Your Meditation with Hong Sau. Before we begin this class and go into the technique of Hong Sau and I share a little bit about what this class is all about, let's begin with a prayer. So I invite you to join in with me. Heavenly Father, great masters, beloved Guru Paramhansa Yogananda, help us dive deep in these teachings and this ancient technique of Hong Sau. Teach us to use it perfectly and to perfect our own natures. May we use this technique to attain the state of self-realization. Om, peace, Amen. So this class is called Deepen Your Meditation with Hong Sau. And when someone requested me to do a class on meditation, I was playing with the name. I says, what name should we have? Now, how to meditate would not fit a spiritual renewal week class because many people here already meditate. And most people here are Kriya Yogis or they have learned the Hong Sau technique of meditation. And so I said, why don't we have a class on deepening our meditation with Hong Sau? What this class will be, it will revise or review the technique. We don't want to revise the technique. We want to review the technique. We'll do that. But we'll also understand the role it plays and how to do it. Hopefully, we'll understand how to do it better and make sure that we are not doing it wrong. Those of us who practice this technique every day need a review more than those of us who probably won't practice it every day because we are investing a lot of time, twice a day, ideally, at least once a day, year after year, decade after decade, probably all of our lifetime. So we might as well do this right. So I have here a few things. Those of you who are new, we share this technique as a part of our first course on the path of Kriya, Ananda course in meditation, where we go into each component bit by bit in great detail, make sure you can absorb those and put them into play in your daily meditation practice. So we'll have such a course starting next week. You will receive an email about it. If this is brand new to you, you might find you are receiving a lot of information. That's all right. As you will have the recordings of this webinar available to you. You can come back at any point, revisit what's shared. And there are many other videos and resources on Hong Sau online which can help you in your understanding until you take our full-length course, which I encourage everybody to do to learn this technique correctly and completely. So the other thing is, if you have questions, we might not have an opportunity or a way to ask them right now, but you can always send us an email. My email is sagar@ananda.org. By implication, my name is Sagar, which I forgot to tell you first thing in the start of this course. But you had my bio as a part of the SRW page. I've been practicing Hong Sau for a few decades, I could say. I learned it when I was 12 years old, when I took the SRF lessons. And since then, I've practiced it sporadically, but I've practiced it consistently for over a decade now. And in my own small, little, but direct experiential way, I can say this technique is very powerful. And it's also the foundation. It's on the foundation, if the foundation is strong, that you can build an edifice. And so those of you who are practicing Kriya Yoga, you will see. If your Hong Sau practice is strong and vibrant, and if it can take you deep, it's like the foundation on which all other techniques rest. In fact, those of you who have done some of our courses know there are 8 principal ways spirit can be experienced. And we are talking here of direct experience. It's not mumbo jumbo. It's not book knowledge. And those 8 ways, each of us, you and I, no matter our nationality, no matter our age, no matter whatever else, by practicing these teachings, we can experience spirit in 8 ways. Peace, calmness, joy, light, power, sound, and love, and wisdom, that's the 8th one. All of them rest on the first experience of spirit as peace. And that's what Hong Sau brings. When you feel peaceful enough, you will see that other experiences start gradually dawning on your consciousness. So it's This first state, which Hong Sau brings, is very important if you're trying to listen to the inner sounds with closed ears or open ears. It's very important if you have practiced Kriya and are trying to sit still and enjoy the state of joy that Kriya produces. All the meditation techniques take us deep within. Hong Sau has a particular purpose. It also helps us to go beyond the breath. I want to read as a launch pad something that Paramahansa Yogananda wrote, and then we'll go into the technique itself. Here's what Yogananda says. As soon as you think you have to breathe, you are a mortal. How many of us can agree to that? That's true. You don't know how your mortal condition is perpetuated by breath. But by Kriya, you will see you are not breathing anymore. When you're absorbed in Om, you will see you are not breathing. When I lift my eyes, everything is quiet. I'm always in that superconscious state. By practicing the techniques, I realize that my spirit is superconscious and I'm not a mortal being. As soon as you drive from the altar of your mind all sensations, the infinite comes. This is important. You don't need to do anything else. As soon as you drive from the altar of your mind all sensations, then there's no other things need to be done. The infinite comes. That's why it's necessary to get rid of the breath. And you have been given the greatest techniques ever in the Hong Sau and Om techniques. Doing away with the breath is possible by Kriya. So practice Kriya and watch the breath as in Hong Sau. Then you will know you are made in the image of God and you are not tied by the cords of oxygen and food. So Yogananda used to say, that's a big promise. He used to say 24 hours of any other technique doesn't give the same benefit as 1 hour of Hong Sau. And he would say, step 2, 24 hours of Hong Sau won't produce the same effect as 1 hour of deep practice of Kriya. So those of you who have been following this whole pandemic thing, you'll see a lot of statements about exponential growth. And this is an example. You just divide stuff by 24 and you are advancing exponentially on the spiritual path. But coming back to Hong Sau, there's a few things we have to remember. And let's step back from the technique of Hong Sau here and just review meditation itself, because Hong Sau in itself is not what we are doing. We are meditating, and Hong Sau is the tool that will take us deep in our meditation. When we try to meditate, each of us, and we'll see this is true, each of us has 3 aspects to our being that we need to befriend. If we befriend them, they are our friends, they support deep meditation. If we don't, they militate against us meditating deeply. The 3 aspects are body. If you don't have a body, you can raise your hand. Mind. If you don't have a mind, probably you are not understanding what I'm saying anyway. And then the third is the heart's feelings. Now these 3 aspects need to be befriended, and we need to learn to use them to dive deep in meditation. Leave one of these out, and you will see deep meditation does not become possible. So how do you befriend the body? That's called asana. Keep the body still, spine erect, body relaxed, and your eyes gently uplifted. Again, I'm not going to go into each detail in minutiae right now, because this is not a beginner's how to meditate class. But sit erect with an erect spine, still, steady, relaxed, and keep the eyes gently uplifted. By doing that, by making sure the body is free of tensions, we press it into our service, so to speak, when we meditate. Because otherwise there's sprains here, stresses there, you start nodding, you are too relaxed, and before you know, you're not meditating. So the body has to be befriended. The mind has to be befriended, and that's where Hong Sau comes into play, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But that's not enough. The heart's feelings have to be taken care of also, which is why this path of Kriya is a heart-centric path. The heart's aspirations are stimulated by being with those whose heart's aspirations are stimulated. That's why when you read Autobiography of a Yogi, you are reading the book of somebody who's deeply in love with the spiritual path, and automatically you feel that you want to dive deep on the spiritual path also. It's also stimulated by chanting. It's also stimulated by many other practices, but that aspect is important. We are not going to talk about how to stimulate the heart's feelings today because this is a Hong Sau class. But remember, if your heart's not engaged, Hong Sau is incomplete. When we think about the spiritual path, Yogananda said all the experiences on this human plane, if we look at them in the right way, are springboards to understand divine experiences. Human relationships teach us a lot about divine relationships. And think about a human relationship where you have mastered all the laws, but the heart is not there. You and your partner have divided up the chores, you have divided up the finances, you have decided, okay, every day from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. we'll be together, every Saturday we'll go out for dinner. It's all planned out. But you don't love that person. There is no heart there, the relationship will fall. And so remember, if you practice Hong Sau technically correctly, if you have your body in the right place, in the right posture, but your heart's aspiration is not there, your meditations will run dry, which is why I come to a quote from Paramahansa Yogananda. This is from his book, The Essence of Self-Realization, where Yogananda says, a student said to Yogananda, "Sir, I have such difficulty in concentrating. I am faithful to my practice of yoga techniques, but I never seem to get anywhere with them." "Mechanical practice is not enough," the master replied. "There must also be sincere interest in what you are doing. You must deepen your devotion. Just observe people at the movies. Don't they become yogis? See how still they sit during suspenseful parts, how engrossed they are in the plot as it unfolds. All that absorption simply because their interest has been aroused. Meditate in that way. Once you're convinced your mind that you really want to meet God in the inner silence, it will be easy for you to sit still and to meditate deeply." And so this is the importance of heart. And I have said that enough times that I want to move to the next part because we only have an hour. But the next part is just heart is not enough. You need techniques, which is why I come to the second part of this same conversation. A newcomer to Self-Realization Church in Hollywood asked Paramahansa Yogananda, "Why are techniques necessary? Can't a person simply flow with the inspiration he feels when he prays?" So this person was in love. He was inspirationally praying and everything else. He was the other side of the coin. "A violinist may feel inspiration," Yogananda replied, "but if he doesn't learn the techniques that have been developed through the experience of great musicians, he will never become more than an inspired amateur. Yoga techniques in the same way are necessary to help you to plumb the inner silence." And so the fusion of these things is what makes for a successful meditation practice. The heart's aspiration has to be engaged, be enthusiastic about the spiritual path, and then channel that enthusiasm scientifically by using yogic techniques. And this is where Hong Sau comes into play. There are a few things here. Now let's talk about, we talked about taking care of the body. We talked about taking care of the heart. Now we are coming to taking care of the mind, making sure the mind supports our meditation. Now the mind is an interesting creature. And to understand what this mind is all about and why the need of a technique, I often tell people this story which Yogananda told, and because it's from India, it has an elephant in it. Elephants are common in India. Even today, if you go and are walking on the streets, you might see an elephant next to a BMW, vying for right of the way, and next to them is a buffalo or a cow. It's a unique place. But coming back to the elephant. So there was this elephant. He was young, he was not yet a mature adult. He was very naughty, as kids can be, lots of energy. And the handler of the elephant, who used to sit on the elephant's back, had a lot of trouble making him, follow all the rules. So whenever they went through the village, no matter what this handler did, the elephant's nature was to be restless. So his trunk, he was moving it here and there. He would steal an apple here, a banana there, steal somebody's hat, push somebody else, basically create pandemonium as he went through the village. So finally, the handler said, "Okay, let me try different remedies to get this elephant to be still." First, he tried giving the elephant a sermon. Didn't work. Then he tried to be strict and shout at the elephant. Be still. Didn't work. So he tried everything else. But then he realized what he was doing wrong was it was the nature of this elephant to do something. You can't make him quiet by giving him nothing. You have to give him one thing to do. And so what he did was he decked the elephant in wonderful garments, put a crown on his head, got a professional photographer and took a photo of this elephant, framed it, put it on a staff, made a flag out of that photo and gave it to the elephant. And the elephant was so happy. Everybody needs to see my handsome photo. So next time they went through the village, he held that photo, the staff, the flag aloft in his trunk. So everybody would see it. But in doing that one thing, he had stopped pushing people away, stealing an apple, stealing a banana, and all those other things. And so it's the same with the mind. Try stilling the mind by giving it a sermon. If it works for you, great. But generally it won't work. Try scolding your mind. That won't work either. It has to be given one thing that will, because it's its nature to do something. Give it that one thing that it can focus on, which brings us to this technique of Hong Sau. Without Hong Sau, Yogananda said, and this is very important, he said, because those of you who were there in the morning class, you saw Nayaswami Jyotish mention the three minds, the subconscious, superconscious, and the conscious. Yogananda said, we want to avoid subconscious meandering. Many people spend many years and lifetimes meandering in the subconscious. Hallucinations, semi-visions, dreams, half asleep. And Hong Sau is the way to cut through the subconscious. So it's very important because unless we do that, we don't see that higher state of superconsciousness. So Hong Sau can help us with that. Now let's come to the technique. I'm going to mention a few things here. One is, let's start with the most important part of the technique. And the most important part of Hong Sau, and I'm going to diverge here from what the books say, but you'll see why. When I ask this, right now people have masks and we can't have a Q&A, so I'll have to give the answer, which is all right. I often ask people in the class, what's the most important part of Hong Sau? And they say, observing the breath. Then I say, well, what's the most important part of energization for those of you who have learned energization? Many people will say feeling the energy and all those things. But sometimes I differ. I say the most important part of Hong Sau is to, before I answer that, think about it this way. What's the most important aspect for being a good parent? You have to love the idea of being a parent. Now, if you never wanted to be a parent, no matter how hard you try, it's something against your nature. What's the most important factor for being married? You have to love the idea of being married. Otherwise, it's a burden you are carrying all along. What's the most important thing for being a monk? You have to love the idea of being a monk. Otherwise, you're militating against your own nature. And so with Hong Sau too, and energization and Kriya, the most important thing is to learn to enjoy the process. And once we do that, all the other things, when you are enthusiastic about something, you read up on it, you dive deeper, you experiment, you explore, you talk to others about it, everything else follows. Let your enthusiasm lead your spiritual quest and follow it with discipline, persistence, and learning the right techniques rather than creating your own set of teachings. We'll come to that in just a bit. But now let's get back to Hong Sau. The most important thing in Hong Sau is to observe your breath. Where do you observe it? At the highest point in the nostrils. You don't observe it in the diaphragm. You don't observe it in the chest. You observe it in the nostrils at the highest point where you can feel it. Now, there are a few things here, because that line, observing our breath, sounds like it's easy. But there's a few things. Observing means three things, if I remember right. We'll see. One is, you don't control your breath. You allow the body to breathe naturally. But you are observing, so you control your mind. So while your breath does what it wants, you are not allowing your mind to do what it wants. You have to observe the breath. And this is not easy. And the third thing is, whenever your mind wanders, you bring it back. Observe the breath doesn't clarify a lot of what Hong Sau is about. The more technical definition would be bringing the wandering mind back again and again to observing the breath. That's what Hong Sau is about. Because when you sit to meditate, you will see. You are meditating, you say, I'm going to practice Hong Sau, I observe the breath. And then, whatever errand you are supposed to do after you get up from meditation will start playing in your mind, or the Excel sheet you are supposed to fill for your job project will start playing in your mind, and mentally you will have filled half the Excel sheet and wondered, well, what will the boss say? What will this person say? When you realize, well, that's not what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be observing the breath. What you do at that juncture is what will make or break your Hong Sau practice. Drop the thought journey and calmly go back to observing the breath. Now do this whether the thought journey was pleasurable or one that you wanted to get away from. In other words, if in your thought journey the boss was scolding at you, it's easier to say, well, I don't want this, I'll go observe the breath. But if you are getting the best employee award, there might be the tendency to say, well, this I want to play with. Let me wait a bit and then observe the breath. Don't do that. Whatever your mind is playing with, come back to observing the breath. This is what trains us. Now, there are a few things here. It's not enough to just bring the wandering mind back. Because Yogananda said something very interesting. He said, inattention during this technique can be soporific, producing sleep. Concentrated attention, on the other hand, brings to every body cell a tingling sense of divine life. Now, why is this important? We will be practicing Hong Sau, which is bringing the wandering mind back, at least 1,000,000 times, maybe millions of times. So, how we bring our mind back is as important as bringing our mind back. If you bring your mind back with frustration, darn it, I messed up again, you will be affirming frustration millions of times. If you bring it back with anger, you'll be at yourself for allowing your mind to wander. You'll be affirming that quality 1,000,000 times. If you bring it lazily, you'll be affirming that quality in yourself 1,000,000 number of times. So the way we bring our wandering mind back is as important, perhaps the most important as compared to just bringing it back. So bring it back with concentration, with resolve, with relaxation, and with the determination and cheerfulness. I am in it. How many of you have seen Captain America? Now, which movie was that? I think that was the Winter Soldier. I don't know if anybody here saw that movie. And what does Captain America tell his friends? I am in this till the end. That's what he tells Bucky. Don't worry, you can keep going. You can beat me up. I'm in this, I'm on your side till the end. And that's the attitude you want in Hong Sau. What's there to do? Bring the wandering mind back again and again calmly, and you will see that eventually the practice of Hong Sau becomes a joy. The breath becomes calmer. The mind, which is locked onto the breath, becomes calmer also. You start enjoying the pauses in between the inhalations and exhalations. You start enjoying the process of inhalation and exhalation. And it becomes a joy having to dive deeper. It's like any relationship. In the beginning, it's work. But once the foundations have been laid, if they've been laid right, then the amount of work should reduce. It shouldn't increase. So coming back to Hong Sau, what are we talking about? The most important thing, observing the breath in the nostrils at the highest point possible. And then, as the breath comes in, you mentally chant Hong. As the breath goes out, you mentally chant Sau. The word mentally is important. Don't move your tongue or lips. The duration of inhalation and duration of Hong are same. The duration of exhalation and duration of Sau are same. The duration of inhalation and duration of exhalation need not be the same, because you're allowing your body to do what it wants. Very seldom will your inhalations and exhalations be of the same duration. Let the body do what it wants, but follow it as if the breath is making the sound. Inhale, mentally chanting Hong for the duration. enjoy the pause, enjoy the inhalation. When the body decides it wants to exhale, exhale, following the exhalation with the mantra of Sau. During this entire process, keep the body still, keep the body relaxed, keep the mind relaxed, keep the eyes gently uplifted. Stay away from the back of the chair unless you have back issues, in which case there are modifications and you can try. Don't practice Hong Sau while you are sleeping, in a sleeping posture. In yogic parlance or on the path of yoga, some things can be practiced, some yogic states can be practiced while sleeping. One of them is samadhi. When you reach that highest state, it doesn't matter whether you're sleeping or sitting. But you can't learn meditation while you are a novice, which we all are, unless we are self-realized, consider ourselves novices, and sit and meditate. This is how the yogis taught it. As you all know, you can sit on a chair. If you sit on a chair, have an armless chair with a straight back, make sure it's comfortable, your feet are firmly planted on the floor, it's not too short, because then the knees come up. It's not too high, otherwise your feet dangle. Invest in the right chair, in the right place. In fact, the recommendation is have a chair and a place or your seat which is dedicated to meditation. It's an investment of consciousness. And places develop vibrations. When you go to temples, you want to meditate. When you go to bars, you want to drink. When you go to cafes, you want to converse and have coffee. When you go to kitchens, you want to cook. So if we have a place, it does not have to be a room, but at least a corner of the room where you can meditate, then you will see. And if you keep it uplifted, don't have it as a mess, then you'll not want to go there, but keep it uplifted and you'll want to go there to meditate. Face east. If you can't face east, face north. Sit on a piece of wool and a piece of silk. That's what the yogis recommend, because there's certain downward pulling currents which keep our energy locked in the lower chakras, because that's the earth element. It's the element that corresponds to the lowest chakra also. But do your best. The yogic motto is progress should not stop because some outer conditions have not been met. So the ideal state maybe would be you are in an ashram and everything is perfect, but don't wait for that. Start where you are and automatically things will start changing around you. But remember, these little things are not insignificant. Everything comes together. Swami Kriyananda used to say they are like those little strands that tied Gulliver to, the dwarves used to tie Gulliver down. Those of you who have read Gulliver's Travels, he was this giant, and they found they couldn't tie him with little strands, but when thousands of those were brought together, they could keep him subdued. So these little things, it's worth investing in, as is investing in making a routine. Hong Sau is almost ineffective without a strong meditation routine. A vaccine is ineffective without an already existing immune system. That's why you pump a dead person with a vaccine, it won't do him any good. But I'm using analogies here, whether you like vaccines or not, either is okay, but you have to use something as an analogy. But without a routine, you might know the most powerful technique in the universe and it won't help you. So what do the yogis mean by routine? And I often remind people of this, because this is so important. You have to have a time stamp to when you meditate. 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., start small, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Once a day is okay. Twice a day is even better. Why twice a day? Because the effect of meditating once in the morning wears off. You know, just like when you go to the doctor, he prescribes a medication, he says take it twice a day. Simple reason is you take a dose in the morning, its effect wears off, and you need another dose to get the effect again. And so it's with meditation. We meditate in the morning, then the troubles of the days come and our attention starts flowing outward. We need to recenter ourselves once more. So in the evening we meditate again. Have a set time, start small, but stick to it. No matter what, stick to it. And you will see you will advance on the path of self-realization. It's not rocket science. These principles are what make for success in any field of human endeavor. So, apart from that, with the technique, I was talking about the technique, observing the breath, enjoying the process, observing it at the highest point in the nostrils, using the mantra of Hong and Sau. And then there is one more thing, which is the index finger movement, which people sometimes don't like. Yogananda recommended when you inhale, or when the body inhales of its own accord, bring the right index finger in gently. So it doesn't have to be a motion that disturbs you. It can be very gentle. People might even not see it, subtle. But bring the right index finger in, and you don't have to keep your arm raised. I'm doing this so you can see it. But when you exhale, relax the right index finger out. Now, most people find this difficult. And I have been doing some voice lessons with a friend here, and I've been learning the guitar with another friend. And, let's take the voice lessons friend first. I told him certain notes are difficult for me to play. Now, he is a good teacher, which is why he didn't say to me, oh, you find those things difficult, don't ever do it. Just focus on the notes in your register that work well for you. He said, no, your strengths are your strengths. But work on those things that are still difficult, because that's where you can improve and become better. Same with playing guitar. If I go to my friend Prashad and say, well, F chord's hard, he won't say, well, forever learn songs that don't have the F chord. He'll say, well, practice the F chord better. So, especially for those who have a resistance to moving the index finger, there's something in it for you. The very fact that you might find it difficult is a challenge, that there is something that aspect of this technique might give you. So that's why I said this particular class is for those who are practicing sincerely, day after day, year after year, decade after decade, until we become self-realized. Do this perfectly. Yogananda said, I have chosen the best and the finest for you, and I've taken away all unnecessary things without which you can find God. I've only kept those necessary things. Do them as I have suggested, and you will reach the same goal that I have reached. That's what Yogananda said. And so let's take him up on the challenge. So index finger movement, practice it at least for 5 years before you give up on it. I'm just exaggerating the time here, but yeah, you will see there is a benefit. And there's the greatest benefit that comes is you tune into the Guru. For those of you who see Paramahansa Yogananda as the Guru, it's interesting. I'll often ask people, on the path of Kriya, what's the best, most important benefit of energization? And many people will say, I feel energetic. Greater the flow of energy, greater the will, greater the flow of energy, and all those things. But sometimes one student will say, attunement to the Guru. And I says, you nailed it on the head. The other answers are okay until you take the course on discipleship. You do something because you will gain something from it. But once you become a disciple, even if you didn't know what it was for, you would do it, because that's what the guru-disciple relationship means. So it's the same with Hong Sau. If you have become a disciple, why not dive completely and see what it does to you? So the benefit might not come from the index finger movement, but from learning to tune in a deeper way to Paramahansa Yogananda. So these things work on many levels. The techniques we have been given, they sculpt us, they carve us on many levels. And the more we dive deep enthusiastically, the more we gain from them. Which reminds me, this is another story with Hong Sau. Now, I know most people won't do this, because this is a group, most of you are Kriya Yogis who have been practicing these teachings, have a connection with Yogananda. But I say this still, don't change the technique. The moment you change it, it does not remain the Hong Sau technique of Yogananda. Sometimes people ask me, oh, well, can I replace Hong Sau with I am spirit? And I say, sure. But don't call it Hong Sau technique. Call it I am spirit technique or something else. So you know you are not practicing the Hong Sau technique anymore. Or they say, well, can I say I am he or soham? Well, call it something else. It's a variant. Again, I'm using ideologies, terminologies from what I'm seeing in the news these days. But we want the actual thing. So, there's a story Swami Kriyananda often used to say. And for those who are not Indian, the Indian part of the story would stick out, and you will see why. But for me, in a humorous way, the American part of the story stuck out. And again, you will see why. The story was, Swamiji said, in a school, the teacher asked the class to write an essay on the camel. And so different people from different nationalities did different things. He says the Japanese went and went to the library, and let's say he read upon the camel and wrote his essay. The English said, I'll visit the zoo and see a camel. And he wrote an essay that way. The German said, I'm going to go to the best camel tamer I know and interview him. And I'll write an essay that way. And so on and so forth. Everybody did their own thing. And Swamiji used to say, the Indian, he went to his meditation room. He had his, meditation place which faced east and all those things that we talked about. He closed the curtains. He sat in the lotus posture and he started meditating. Lord, tell me all about the camel. So he was hoping to get all the inspiration in his meditation, which is what most people remember. But I remember then Swami said, the American, he went to the zoo or somewhere, he saw a few camels and he wrote an essay. How to make a better, more efficient camel. 2 humps and bigger ears, bigger feet, I don't know. And so Yogananda was very appreciative of the Western, especially spirit of wanting to improve. And that's part of how we evolve, but not with yogic techniques. These techniques are already perfect. They don't need your or my improvements to make them work better. In fact, unknowingly, because they are so subtle, they work with us as we are made physically, astrally, causally, and on the soul level, which we have no ideas about. The more we play around with them, the more we might add things that we don't want to add. So practice the technique as it is taught. I often say yoga is unique. It's ancient and state of the art. Very few other technologies are like that. They're either ancient or state of the art. But it's ancient because truths don't change. Our natures are, how do I put it? If you have an operating system, every few years, few months, there's an upgrade which you have to download. Even now, I was printing these, and when I shut down my computer, Windows 10, it was updating. It said, okay, don't turn it off, we are updating. But we are not like that. Our chakras remain the same. Every 5 years, God does not update our chakras saying, well, there is Anahat Chakra version 10.2. I've improved it. And there's Sushumna version 11.3. No. We are what we are. It's already perfect. And these techniques work with that level of perfection. So what have we covered thus far? We have covered the importance of Hong Sau. We have covered the importance of being enthusiastic and in love, both with the spiritual path, and learning to love and enjoy the technique. But while doing that, remembering to come back again and again to the first principles. Observe the breath in the highest point in the nostrils with the mantra, don't control it. Bring the wandering mind back again and again with peace and calmness. Knowing that this technique in its own time will work. It will work. It does work. Yogananda used to say, I'm talking from the testimony, not of my own life, but thousands of years of yogis who have testified that these teachings work. And finally, very soon, you will be adding your own testimony too, because these techniques are made for you and I who are here on this planet in this age. And so with all this said, the final thing Yogananda used to say is, don't get up and leave after practicing a technique. Sit and enjoy the peaceful after effects it creates. So if you practice Hong Sau 10 to 15 minutes, sit and enjoy the after effects of Hong Sau, the peace and calmness that come for another 10 to 15 minutes. Drop the technique, but don't get up. Enjoy and dive deeper. It's like preparing a meal and then sitting to enjoy it. In that stillness, you can receive that peace. If it goes deep enough, you'll start hearing the inner sound or start seeing the inner light, or that peace will translate into joy, intense bliss. Otherwise, it's a time to open your heart and pray deeply also. True prayer happens after the practice of the techniques. When the mind is still, the heart is open. We start our meditations with a prayer, but true prayer also, as Yogananda used to say, prayer after practicing Kriya, the power is multiplied 100,000 times. And so when we are interiorized, that's the time to intensely demand, all right, Lord, stop messing around with us. We want to go home. You brought us here, you better bring us back. And when we can do that with our energies focused behind that demand, God has no choice, He starts helping us also. So let me see if I had anything else that I wanted to share. Though, like I said, be adventurous with Hong Sau. Sometimes take an hour or two, all night, 3 hours, 4 hours, find a buddy. Somebody who loves practicing Hong Sau, and dive deep and see what it does to you. Think about the human romance, I say. You never want a relationship to always have a rut and follow that rut. You always want it to be adventuresome, new. And the same thing also is applicable to the spiritual path. Bring a sense of adventure and joy to it, and it becomes joyful and adventurous. At the same time, use the techniques. Don't just flow with your inspiration, but channel it using the Hong Sau. Those of you who have received Kriya, use the Om technique, because these have particular purposes. They bring results. And when you are not practicing Hong Sau, practice the principles of Hong Sau. Remain centered, be a good observer, sensitively tune into other people's realities, see if somebody else needs help. Because most people just think about themselves, I, my, me, mine. There's no observer consciousness. Well, learn to be an observer, make true friends, help others smile. Good test of whether you are progressing on the spiritual path is whether people are happy to be around you. That these tests are simple. It's not just how many hours you meditate, how still you sit, but what does that stillness do to you once you get up? And what does it do to others? If it's creating ripples, then there's something wrong. So, which is why this whole path of Kriya is a path. It's not just one technique. It's not conveyed over a 1-hour lecture, but we expect people to commit. We have these series of classes which train people in these different nuances. And then you see it all comes together in a wonderful whole and helps us become self-realized and helps us to help others wherever they are on their own spiritual quest. So with that, let's do some guided meditation. I was curious about how we would do on time, but we have 20 minutes. So I'm going to transition to that chair there. And we'll do a short meditation together. Like I said, if there are any questions, thoughts, feedback, you can send us an email, sagar@ananda.org, or any other email. Eventually, it will find its way to the right person. And it's always a pleasure to share these teachings. It's a pleasure to practice these teachings as part of this wonderful community. So let's do a Hong Sau meditation together. So let's keep our spines erect, away from the back of the chair. If you're on a chair, try to plant your feet firmly on the floor. Be relaxed. We don't have to be perfect in this meditation. We just have to be there, and we have to follow the technique as it's been given to us. So make sure spine's erect, chest open, palms upturned at the juncture of thigh abdomen, eyes gently uplifted, your heart smiling. You left all your worries and tasks on a shelf. Don't bring them into your meditation. And let's again do a short prayer. Heavenly Father, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lairi Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, and Paramahansa Yogananda, we invoke your blessings. Help us to use your Guru-given techniques to reach the same state of self-realization that you and all great ones enjoy. Om, peace, Amen. In thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy love, I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy love. I awake in thy love, I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy love. I awake in thy joy, I awake in thy joy. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy joy. I awake in thy joy, I awake in thy joy. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy joy. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free, I awake in thy light. So let the words of this chant reverberate in your mind just for a couple minutes or a few seconds. I awake in thy light, love and joy. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy light. So let's prepare the body. Those of you know the double breath. Double breathe through the nose, tensing the body, not the mind, just the body. Double exhale through the nose and mouth, relaxing the body. Do this 3 times. Tense, vibrate, don't be in a hurry. Relax and feel, don't be in a hurry. Double inhale and tense. Again, enjoy the relaxation. Double inhale and tense. Enjoy the relaxation. And let's do a few rounds of even count breathing. Inhale to a count of 6. Use your belly. Be very relaxed. Hold. Again, be very relaxed. Exhale. Inhale again, expanding the belly. Hold. Exhale. One last time. Hold. Exhale. Take a deep breath, filling the lungs. And whenever the body wants, now don't control your breathing, let the body decide when it wants to exhale. Exhale completely. Make sure your spine's erect and eyes are gently uplifted. And observe the breath in the nostrils. As you feel the breath coming in, mentally chant Hong for the duration of inhalation. Enjoying this process. Enjoy the pause if there is a pause. And whenever the body starts exhaling, follow it mentally with the mantra of Sau. Again, enjoy this process. Be alert, be relaxed, and enjoy the pause if there is a pause. Let's do this for a minute or two. Observing the breath in the nostrils at the highest point you feel. With the spine erect, eyes uplifted, and body relaxed. Your mind has wandered, gently bring it back to observing the breath. Make sure your spine erect, eyes are uplifted. Your entire attention is on observing the breath, not at focusing on the point between the eyebrows. Hong as you inhale, Sau as you exhale, and enjoy the pauses. Let's do this for another couple minutes. Now as you observe the breath, try to bring the right index finger in as you inhale. Enjoy the pause. Whenever the body exhales, relax the right index finger out very gently. Do this for another minute or so. Spine erect and eyes gently uplifted. Body and mind relaxed. Now gently let go of the technique, but keep sitting still. Make sure eyes are gently uplifted. And relax and enjoy the stillness that comes when the body is steady, when the thoughts have been rested, or at least subdued. Feel the relaxation in the heart and at the point between the eyebrows, and immerse yourself in it. And very deeply, if you like, you can pray to Yogananda, to Master, or to God. I'm in this to the end. Ask them to bless and help your efforts and to inspire them. Was a really short Hong Sau meditation, but we have these 2-hour meditations every morning as part of SRW if you are able to join. And try in those meditations to do Hong Sau for longer. Hong Sau, by the way, very interestingly means I am spirit. And I have often, or I am he. And I've often thought, well, it does not say I might be spirit. Or now that I've acted well, I am spirit. But now that I have not done well, I am not spirit. It's not conditional. It simply affirms our true nature. And eventually, by practice, it brings us to a realization of that affirmation. These techniques, the path of Kriya, Yogananda said, is foolproof. And so they will take us to that destination if we keep trying. You don't have to be perfect in practicing Hong Sau. If your mind does not wander, you don't need it. Why would you practice Hong Sau? So if your mind is wandering, use the technique. Like I said, if there are any questions, you can always write us later. And we are there. We are all in this journey together, and we'll reach the divine goal together. Thank you all for joining. And I hope many of you can come for the kirtan later this evening. Joy to you.